Can you get into an onsen with a tattoo? The answer is no, like really no. About 20 years ago, like a lot of their clients were organized crime people, like really a lot. Like in some cases, like 100%. It's gone from like 100% to like less than 1%. There's not many yakuza anymore. There was a tattoo boom. Actually, it was less taboo then. There was a tattoo convention almost on every single weekend. So a really, really, really big thing that happened with the whole subculture, the tsunami happened, then people just stopped having fun.
Thanks for joining us on Unpacking Japan, proudly produced by our team at Zen Studio with the long-standing support of Zen Group. To keep these weekly stories coming, please consider subscribing. It's the best way to support the show and really makes a difference. And now, let's get into it. Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today I have the pleasure to welcome Manami. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're an author, you're a journalist, you've written extensively on Japanese culture, and your latest or upcoming book, depending on when this is going to be released, is The Japanese Tattoo.
Yes.
You've brought a very beautiful print with you, and we'll talk a lot about this. It's a very extensive piece of work where you've spent, I don't know how much, but I assume an extensive amount of time researching, meeting the people that are working on these very traditional Japanese tattoos.
Yes.
And you will tell us all about it today. But before we talk about tattoos, I want to know a little bit more about you and your background. You were telling me just before we started that you are originally, or you grew up in Sydney, Australia. Tell me a little bit more about kind of what it was like and how you got back to Japan, where I think your family is originally from.
So basically, like many people in Sydney, so my my Japanese family, so they moved there before the economy was like very strong in Japan, and it was during a time when like it didn't matter where, like anywhere was better than Japan, and so they flipped a coin in the office, and and his coworker went to Brazil, and my dad went to Sydney, and so he was working as an accountant for like Canon, the camera company, and so I grew up in Australia, and so I would say I'm like Australian Japanese. My personality is very Australian, and the way I think and my mannerisms, and also my friendliness, I would say, is Australian as well. And then as like the economy rose, like a lot of Japanese came back here, and that's basically what my family did as well. And so I've been here my whole adult life. So starting from university onwards, I was like here, except for I did my master's in New York, and then
Before moving back here and going to university in Japan, did you travel back and forth a lot growing up in Sydney?
I did actually. So I was like staying at my grandma's house, and so for every summer holiday, which is like 6 weeks or 2 months, like I'd just come back to my grandma's house, and so I always had the link with Japanese culture, and then as I was kind of getting like into my teenage years and stuff. I started to appreciate it. But like at first I was like, why do I have to be here? And then it was just my parents wanted me to have two cultures. And then so I was kind of engaged in like traditional culture, like Aikido and stuff like that. But then as I went into my teenage years, I started discovering pop culture and fashion, and stuff like sneakers and like street culture. And I was like, actually, Japan's really cool. Like, So I started to appreciate and enjoy Japan more. So
earlier, you described that you kind of have a mixed culture and maybe a bit more the Australian side on a personality, from a personality point of view.
Yeah.
How did you kind of perceive both cultures growing up overseas, but having like the Japanese culture at home? Did you identify more with either or at the time already?
No, I identified as Australian when I was in Australia, and then now that I'm in Japan, I kind of identify as Japanese more. But I do recognize that my personality is probably more Australian, and but like. I mean, for Japanese people, like in Japan, they often don't appreciate their own culture. So I've got the privilege of having two perspectives. So a lot of the things that like there's a kind of mentality here, like where like an artist or something has to make it overseas for them to be appreciated in Japan. So like a lot of the artists that I like New Jobbers and DJ Crush and people like that, like they were like pretty much like just underground artists, and then people overseas were like, oh, they're so awesome, and then and then they get recognized here. And this is pretty much it's the case with so many kind of like interesting and great artists from Japan. Is like just a lot of Japanese people really are not interested in their culture. Like I can really see that even now. So
where do you think that comes from, that they are only maybe not for all of them, obviously, but they only get really, these underground artists get popular in Japan only after making it overseas, which is also often not intentional from what you mentioned. It's just like the songs get picked up by some people in, I don't know, New York, Europe, Australia.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's like, oh, these guys overseas are listening to this. Maybe we should be too.
Yeah, I think also because like, like in the early 2000s and stuff like that, it was before Japan was cool. So like, with like nowadays it's like so globally popular and stuff like that. And so, and there's a lot of like, attention towards Japan, so many inbound tourists and things like that. But, when I was growing up, it really wasn't cool at all. Like it was like, we go to like a sushi restaurant and you could see people just looking at it like going, that's raw. Like what the hell? Like, are you seriously going to eat that? And now, like nowadays, Japanese culture is more like recognized overseas. But it was kind of seen as like everything good is from overseas. But in a way, I kind of found there was like not 100% unhealthy as well, because there was like a lot of outward attention, like they were looking overseas. And nowadays, I think a lot of people are quite insular, like Japanese people, so they've lost a bit. Too much of a curiosity for like what's happening globally. So when I was growing up, it was still like, like a lot of Japanese people were like backpacking and like they really wanted to go overseas and they were super curious and like even if they weren't going to like mainstream places like, like America or Australia, like they were going to like tripping around Asia and stuff like that. Like, so there's a real curiosity, like a healthy curiosity for overseas. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Like, to like, of course you should be proud of your culture or whatever, but and like, it's not, obviously it's not that good to be only seek validation from outside. But at the same time, I did kind of think like it is good to be, conscious of what's happening outside of here and, like have that kind of like natural curiosity and like, and kind of appreciation for overseas as well. So, yeah, I didn't think it was a bad thing. And I kind of grew up like, as well on the cusp of like, I would say like in the 90s and 2000s, there was this whole idea of like this remix culture and youth culture in general was very interested in consuming things from overseas and kind of experimenting with self-expression and things like that. So it was a pretty interesting time in terms of like youth cultures and subcultures and popular culture in general, I'd say.
So when you kind of are at the age where your parents moved back to Japan for work and you kind of graduate high school,
yeah.
Did you consider staying in Australia or were you kind of decided, or no, I want to explore Japan more now that you kind of had discovered this interest into these different aspects of culture here?
The thing with Australia, it's actually really close. So if I was moving to like, somewhere really, really far, then I might have thought about it more deeply. But just because the proximity to Japan and there's no time difference and a lot of my friends in Australia, like they travel so much. So even now, like I still see my Australian friends. So, and they all come for snowboarding and stuff like that. So
musical.
Yeah.
Little Sydney or
it's like
so.
all filled with Aussies, yeah. But I don't, like rather than missing the country, I miss my friends, like the people. So as long as I can see them, I don't feel homesick. So
what did you decide to study at the time here in Japan?
I was doing like infotech, which is kind of random, because I didn't really know what to do. So and basically like because my Japanese proficiency wasn't great, so I just needed to do something I could get into. So that was like what I ended up doing. But somehow the professors were like, I was at Tokyo University and the professors were like so great. Like they were so, it was such a nice community and I'm really glad I went there actually.
Yeah, you were telling me just before we started that sometimes people are considered lucky when they have one great professor in their kind of higher education career.
Yeah.
And you've had plenty. What made them so great?
Just like a feeling of mentorship and also just a feeling of like guidance and actually like, with education, like you are actually learning from people who actually know what they're talking about. And so I do have a respect for kind of, like higher education and the process of learning and people who like have spent their entire lives like devoting themselves to like a certain subject and they're willing to share that with you. And so over, going to university here and also just the kindness and they did try and create this kind of community kind of feeling. So a lot of people were just hanging out in the professor's room. So there was always like, 10 people there and stuff. And so you did feel like you were part of like something, just like there's always like a conversation happening. But yeah, so like yeah, over my education career, I'd say like there's been so many professors that I've really looked up to, and also just they're not necessarily teaching you facts. It's more the way to the way to gain knowledge and the way to see things. And so, for example, like with urbanism, this sounds kind of random, but like because a lot of my work, especially for the tattoo work, is like to do with your urbanism and the culture of the commoners. And so actually, when I was at Columbia, like I was doing journalism, but you can take outside courses. And so I did urbanism at the School of Architecture, and I had this really, really great professor. Like she was amazing, like Lynn Breslin, and just the way that like urbanists look at the city, like it's like even though she was talking about things that like that I'm quite familiar with, and like movies I might have seen, is just the way that she relates that back to the city and the way of looking at the city that was really, really helpful in just like constructing the way that I do my creative projects, and also just my day-to-day experience of like understanding the city and the way people relate to it. And so even with my cultural projects, like they are very much like location based. It's about localism, it's about like local culture. So doing that really kind of changed the way that I structure my thoughts and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely not just like the facts that they can teach you. It's more just like the way of thinking.
And the perspectives that kind of help you create on the society you live in.
Yeah, precisely. And
so you first studied in Japan, then you mentioned Colombia and New York. Was this like one right after the other, or was it a little bit of a break in between?
I think with journalism, the journalism course, the masters are like most people came in mid-career, and it is a pretty good thing if like, because I kind of winged it into journalism. So and I had no idea what I was doing. Seriously, it was like my early journalism stories are really embarrassing, but so at some point like mid-career, a lot of people like are like, so what should I do now? And then they do the masters, and it's only 1 year, so you only take, it's not like a PhD where you're taking like many
like a
years.
3-year, 4-year research project.
Yeah. So it's only 1 year, so like it gives you the time to just kind of like reflect on what you want to do, and so it was a pretty like it was super intense, but yeah, it was really helpful just in like having like not so much the journalism course itself, like to be honest, but like certain professors I met along like during my time there who were really, really beneficial in just the way that they saw, again, like the way that they saw things. Yeah.
How was it like for you personally then to be back in Japan and to live here? You described it earlier when you were younger and having to go to your grandparents' place, like, oh, you didn't really want to be here. Then you discovered an interest into like a pop culture and such. But once you actually moved here or moved back here and have made the decision to stay, how are you experiencing the city? How are you experiencing the society? Did you start noticing it in a way through the lens of a foreigner, as you described yourself as Australian until then?
Yes, but the really big difference between my experiences and a lot of the people who come here, like, is that I have family here. So it helps me feel a lot more grounded. So a lot of people, like, I know after a few years, they feel really homesick because they miss their family. And then there's like family commitments, and then they start questioning where is home and stuff like that. So even though a lot of my best friends are like in Australia, like, because I do have family there, it really makes a huge difference into like where I consider to be home. If they weren't here, then I might feel very differently about it. And also, like Japan is a pretty good place if you're a curious person. So there is like a lot to explore, I think. And also in the process of kind of discovering my own identity, I was like looking at a lot of things that, like, a lot of my books are basically personal projects and just things that I am curious about. So rather than me being commissioned to do stuff, it normally just follows my lifestyle and just what I'm into at the time. So
it's quite a luxury.
It is actually. And I don't think, and the other thing is I don't work in corporate Japan. I don't work in an office environment. Like, I don't have a Japanese boss. Like all my editors are like, I'm kind of like a foreign correspondent. So I'm working with like similarly minded people, and like people who are like really passionate about things I'm interested in, for example, like print culture and also like books as a medium. this kind of like analog kind of like the printed matter, like the qualities of paper, um, the way that we absorb information through a book, like the tactile sensation of paper, and just being part of like a kind of general like book culture. So so for me and my friends, if we go to like Jimbocha, the book district, it's you do feel like you're part of something, like part of a culture. And like I'm not just like a random amoeba floating around just going, yeah, Japan's fun kind of thing. Like I do feel involved in like these kinds of cultures that like that exist here. So and Japan's not like in Australia, you can just make friends by walking around.
Yeah.
And like being a cool person. So and whereas in Japan, I kind of think you need to have like a hobby or an interest group to form a community. And so whenever I have friends or like people coming to live here, I'm like, it really helps to like have a hobby or like then you can, without a community, it's actually, I don't think Japan's a great place to live.
Yeah, it's difficult.
It's very, very difficult. Like it can be very, very isolating. And, it's one of the melees of like living in a highly dense city is that the more dense the city is, the more isolated the people are. And particularly in terms of Japan. So I just happen to be interested in a lot of the things that are here. So in particular, the book culture, that's a really big one for me.
So as a student, you were not so sure what you wanted to do. You studied a little bit of urbanism. You went to do some journalism overseas. But eventually you graduate, you're back in Japan, and you kind of have to decide to start doing something. Yeah. You mentioned that all your books were kind of personal projects. So at the time when you graduate, what do you kind of embark on? What do you kind of dive into first?
So actually, when I was doing my Japanese degree, like my undergrad, I already started doing journalism then. So this is even before I went to Columbia. Mm-hmm. So during the time, like there was also like magazines were really strong.
Yeah, still today, actually, Japan is probably one of the strongest magazine cultures.
Yes, yeah, Japan is like very, very strong for magazines, but during the time globally, like magazines were strong. Like, so you could actually just live pretty well just doing magazine work. And so I was kind of like in part of that era. And so, with Japanese unis, they're pretty lax. Mm-hmm. And so I was working at an agency called August, and they were really, really, really influential in the way that I thought, because they do kind of like advertising campaigns and fashion and kind of stuff. But they, and at a very high quality, but they were able to separate their professional work with their personal interests. So they always had like passion projects going on. So the boss is like Peter Ryan, like he they're just doing like very, very high end like fashion, but because he was into street culture and things like that, so he would put a lot of his creative energy into doing his passion projects while doing this at the same time. And so that's kind of like how I do my work as well. So like no matter what I do in terms of like my more mainstream work, like I always try and have a passion project going on parallel. So that was going on while I was in university, and then I started writing as well. So actually I've been doing this subculture works like from when I was in university. So
you covered a lot of topics, and you said they were kind of personal journeys.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about some that were very important to you? I think there was even one about kokeshi dolls.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
How do these topics come up, and kind of what are you trying to figure out by researching them?
But most of them have a common thread of like craftsmanship. Mm-hmm. So even with the tattoos, like it's like an artisanal culture, and with the kokeshi, it's an artisanal culture. Like actually, many of my books, like kimonos, is about the craftsmanship of kimonos. Like even with the cat project, like there's a lot of like artisanal, like almost all my books are somehow artisanal. Like they've got like the artisanal philosophy in there, and like we need like. I can't imagine everyone is like reading all my books at the same time, but like they all have a common thread. And so the philosophy of the artisan and the way that people think, like the makers, it doesn't matter if they're doing kokeshi or tattoos, it's really, really, really similar. So it's so there's that kind of like commonality going through it. In terms of kokeshi, like, so my mom is from the Tohoku region, and so that actually turned into like unexpectedly huge project for me because she lost her family house. So that was like like she comes from like a tiny little fishing village called Onagawa, and it was like one of the worst hit places, like in terms of the tsunami, and and so what happened was like a lot of the tsunami evacuees, they were put into like kind of they're made into refugees and put into like various places.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of them ended up in like hot spring villages, like in the Tohoku region.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so but when you go to these hot spring villages, that's where they make the kokeshi.
Ah.
And so normally when you're in Tokyo, like you might see kokeshi in souvenir stores.
Yeah.
And they're one of the iconic things about Japan.
In Asakusa or somewhere around
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. But like it's not like you see where they're made or anything. But then when you go to Tohoku, there's like kokeshi everywhere. Like the whole identity of a town would be kokeshi. It's like kokeshi, kokeshi, kokeshi. Yeah, it's like everywhere. Like the telephone boxes have a kokeshi head on it.
Okay.
Like all the street signs have kokeshi on it. Like the handrails all have kokeshi heads. Like it's kokeshified to the point that it's actually like it's actually really funny. Like it's quite surreal and quirky, and the whole quirkiness kind of like appealed to me. But during the tsunami, basically, like because a lot of media were going to interview the tsunami refugees, they were inadvertently coming across kokeshi, and so that created a kind of kokeshi boom.
Mm-hmm.
And in parallel to that, like all the journalists were going up and just it just seemed like really like as someone, because I do identify as like being half Tohoku, like a Tohoku person, so it felt like a bit exploitative after a while. Like it just like everyone was taking like tragedy photos, and I was like, how does this actually benefit anyone? Like I just felt like after a while I was getting a bit sick of that narrative, and like of course everyone was super well meaning when they're going up and taking those photos, but I just felt like it was just being bombarded with these kinds of images, just kind of like this tragedy narrative. And of course it is really tragic, but like it was also like, what can we do to kind of help them? And so so I wanted to focus on something more positive, and also in line with like, you know, what I do normally. And so I made that book as kind of like just a charity project.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks to the designer, like this woman Toby Fung, like the book was really cute. Like it was a really nice design, and it ended up in like really high end places like the MoMA and stuff.
Wow.
Like that. Yeah, and then that book sold out really quickly, and then I made another one, and then I sold, and that one sold out, and then I sold the project to Tuttle, like which is, you know,
the publishing house.
Yeah, it's probably like Japan's, like for Japan related stuff is probably the biggest. And it doesn't matter what I do, like it's still the most popular. Like
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's like, and even the makers, they're like, why do these dolls not go away? Like even the craftsmen are like, it's a bit of a mystery. Like they have no limbs. They're kind of like super simple, like but somehow people find them endearing, and the range is really wide. So it's kind of like it came at an intersection of like this kind of hipster artisanal boom stuff. And then also the designer toy movement. So whenever I curate shows overseas, a lot of like the soft vinyl toy people, like the
we just talked about it with Corey.
Yeah. And so those guys will come and get some because they see it as just another designer toy kind of thing. And then the people who like cute culture, like kawaii culture, and then the people who just like it's just like Japanese motifs in general, and then the older antique collector types. So it appeals to such a wide range of people. So and yeah, it's just perennially popular. And so and it was a personal project because, you know, like because my family have roots there and stuff. So and I got to appreciate not only like kokeshi culture, but just like Tohoku in general. Like it's so amazing. Like
so a long personal discovery project highlighting kind of the people and their craft from the area.
Yeah, and also Tohoku itself. It's like just to anyone who's watching this, just please go there. It's so amazing. Like the folk culture, the festivals, the food, the people, the hot springs. It's like everything you want from Japan. Like it's so good. Yeah.
Tohoku, I have to add it to the list. It's a bit far from Osaka, but
Yeah.
I'll make it someday.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah.
Your latest project now, another book, one of many you've written, is here on the table, The Japanese Tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking specifically about the traditional tattoos, some that may be stereotyped quite a lot. And I think when we talk about Japanese tattoos, everyone has this image immediately of a yakuza,
Yep.
maybe having the full sleeves or full body or full back or whichever they have.
Yeah.
It's a very complex topic.
Yeah.
Where do you think is a good starting point to dive into it? Is it the history of it? Is it what it is today? Or the craftsmanship, as you were just talking about?
Well, basically, like, it's changed a lot. So, and also there's two kind of parallel cultures. So there is the very artisanal Japanese tattoo culture, where it's done by like craftsmen, so artisans. And then there's also like the modern tattoos, and then that's done by like tattooers, who are more like artists. So these run in parallel. So, and in terms of like the traditional Japanese tattoos, like, which are done like, which is basically a continuation of Edo era, like Japanese like traditional tattoo culture. Because I've actually been doing this for 20 years. So this is like my 4th tattoo book. So and I've got like over 100 magazine articles on tattoos.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really a lot. And like I've interviewed like many of the artists, like, and several like over the entire 20 years, just like continuously. So I've seen the whole kind of scene change. And just because I felt like, everything is changing so rapidly. And I wasn't actually going to put out another book. And then like, but then I could see how much it was changing. And also just because of social media, like not just with tattoos, but, just like culture in general, like everything was changing so much. And so I thought like, I felt like inspired just to leave behind.
What was your original interest into starting to work and research on tattoos?
I was getting tattooed. So, and I just got like a curiosity about tattoos. Like the first time I actually met a tattoo artisan was like when I was a teenager. And there was Horitoku, who's like, like a major figure in traditional Japanese tattooing. And there was this random, like I just saw his work in a magazine. Like it's so random. And I just called him, and which is like in hindsight absolutely ridiculous. Like that's not something you do. Like normally you need like an introduction to these people. And the only reason, like, it was so ridiculous that I would do this, that even he remembers me, like even though it's like 2 decades later. Like, and he was like, I remember the first time you came, and you came, and he even remembers what I was wearing. Like it was so strange that someone like me would just turn up. And when I called him, like I was like, oh, I saw your work in a magazine. Like, and honestly, I'd never seen anything like it. Like, the amount of like this kind of like incredible like energy, like the density of energy, and like the sophistication and the elegance of the work. And he's really famous for like dragons. And like the work I saw was like this white dragon, and it was like lifting off the body, like it had life, and it was like absolutely exquisite. And so, and I didn't know anything about Japanese tattoos. So I just thought it was like a shop. And so I just called him and I was like, oh, can I get tattooed? And he was like, yeah. Like,
what are you talking about?
Yeah. It was just like, yeah. Yeah. And so he actually agreed, but the only reason he agreed, like he tells me like, now, is going like, because it was so outlandish that someone would call him. He was he was just curious, like why someone would be doing this.
And who is a person that is doing
yeah. And then I turned up, I'm like, like a backpacker, like, hi. And he's like, what is this person? So that was like my first introduction. And I actually did start interviewing him like later. I did start interviewing artisans like, roughly about 20 years ago. And the tattoo culture then was very, very, very strong. So it was like super, super peaking. And I went to a tattoo convention around that time. Like
in Japan?
Yeah, in Japan. Yeah, it was like 2006 or something. But it was only females.
Oh.
Which is like so crazy, because now there's not enough to sustain having a convention like that. But like during the time, it was so big, like the tattoo culture. So it was not only like street shop, like female artists, but it was like traditional, like the hand inserted artisans who are female. And the work was so high quality as well. And
it's interesting. An entire convention for female tattoo artists and women that have gotten tattoos in 2006, and you said it was peaking.
Yeah.
There's maybe one of these first misconceptions, or not a misconception perhaps, about how taboo the tattoo is in Japan. But they still had conventions about it.
Yeah. So there was a tattoo boom. So basically, like, what happened was like and actually it was less taboo then. Mm-hmm. So I think it's actually getting worse.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because there was a tattoo boom in the 2000s. And so, and during the time, there was so many magazines. It was like, and there was a tattoo convention almost on every single weekend. It was like, It was crazy. Like, all the subcultures were really popping. Like, it's really hard for me to explain how crazy Japan was. Like, it was before the tsunami, the 2011 tsunami. But there was like so much going on. And it was like not just, it was all the cultures parallel to tattoos. So there was like the low riding scene, and they'd have all the crazy bouncing cars, and they would all get the black and gray tattoos, mm-hmm. like copying the Mexican Americans. And then there'd be like kind of like more like what they call like Oriental tattoos, but it's kind of like Tibetan inspired. And they'd be like slightly hippie-ish backpacker types. And then there'd be like Americana, like, and so there was like a huge kind of like the girls were like pinup girl kind of style, and like they're really into rockabilly music. Mm-hmm. And then there was like Japanese traditional on top of that. So all of this stuff was happening all at the same time, on top of like a body modification scene who are just like into more of like the like this existential kind of like experience of like doing body altercations, like piercing and stuff, mm-hmm. like that. So there was that scene too, and these were all converging at the same time. So there was so much happening, like in terms of subculture kind of stuff. So yeah, it was really, really, really popping. So yeah, literally almost everywhere, like across Japan, there was something like a big convention on.
What was the perception then, the social perception of the tattoo at the time?
So kind of like, so there was, so to put it into a timeline, like, so it was basically kind of like the world of like traditional tattoos. And then in the late 80s, like Horitoku, the person I first met, so he went onto TV and he did this, like, they just wanted to do something like really sensational. And he collaborated with Akira Uno, who's like an illustrator. And so he did the tattoo, which was like this back piece, and it was like super avant-garde. And then he went on national TV, and that created this huge sensation and a lot of visibility for someone, mm-hmm. who's so super underground. And then Kishi and Uchiyama, who are like two tattoo artists, like modern style, like with machines, they approached him, and then they became his students.
Oh.
And then they opened up the first kind of like Western street shops that you see in America. Just like, you know, you can just go in and like get tattooed. And this instigated like this whole tattoo boom. And then eventually there was 500 shops all over Japan, and like all these magazines and all this kind of stuff. So a lot was happening in the subculture world. And you know how it is in Japan, it's kind of like even if the top layer is very conservative and like you know, like, you know, very like on the narrow and like very straight and stuff. But then there's kind of like stuff happening like when you scratch the surface, mm-hmm. and that's what it was like. It was like existing, you know, underground. But it was so big. It was really, really big. And you know, like a lot of the magazines, the tattoo magazines were just all in the company. So yeah, and like and so much was happening in terms of like also just females getting involved. So all the tattoo magazine editors, they were like female as well. So yeah, it's just a really fun time just to be like young. Like,
you said it's changing now, and maybe even getting worse.
Yeah.
What is exactly changing? Maybe what is the cause of that change too?
So basically, like in even like my parents live in Kanagawa, so almost all the beaches there, like from like pretty much Sushi to Chigasaki, they all have tattoo bans. Like the Sento, which is a public bathhouse, like that almost 100% of those used to be like, you can, not the super Sento, but the Sento, like the local bathhouse. Mm-hmm. There used to be like, you know, everyone would go there with tattoos. Like, because in downtown Tokyo, like a lot of the people who have tattoos are like artisans or laborers, and they're the kinds of people who need the bathhouse. And so it used to be just standard that like there'd be so many tattoo people in a center, and nowadays like recently I can see like a lot of these ones are getting taken over by new owners, and so it's not the old people having discrimination, it's the new owners of the center going like,
which is interesting because I do recall slightly before the Olympics, there was a push and a little bit by the Japanese government. Be aware, there might be a lot of foreigners coming to Japan that have tattoos. We need to maybe adjust the rules, make it accessible, without enforcing anything, but kind of trying to communicate that maybe the ryokan or the onsen or the sento or the beaches would be more open to that. But it seems like it's not the case.
Yeah, just because the Olympics didn't actually really happen as intended. So, and we were using, like everyone in the tattoo scene was kind of using that, like, okay, it's time to open up now. And so, and, you know, get more like loose about this whole tattoo thing. But because the Olympics didn't happen, like that kind of fizzled out. And so, even though there's all this kind of like underground kind of like cool stuff happening, like a lot of stuff was happening above ground that just made it really, really obvious. Like just the regular person really doesn't like tattoos here. And it's never really changed in the kind of mainstream. And like, I remember like in Osaka, like Toru Hashimoto, the mayor, like, he made people like working as public servants. He made everyone do a survey, like a super ethically dubious survey, asking whether they had a tattoo and where the placement was and stuff. And then people like and even though like people like Hamasaki, like Ayumi Hamasaki and Nami Amuro, like these really, really famous like J-pop stars, they're getting tattooed, but then they're also getting bashed at the same time. And I would say a really, really, really big thing that happened with the whole subculture kind of vibe was that in 2011, like the tsunami happened, and then people just stopped having fun. Like everyone's attention just went somewhere else. And so like a lot of the people who were going to these tattoo events or doing like pretty much everyone I knew was just doing volunteer work and stuff like that. So they stopped like partying and like doing creative stuff, and they're just going to help out at Tohoku. So so all these tattoo dudes were just like going up and, you know, like so it was a different atmosphere. And like, and if you were like in Japan during the time, you probably know, but like that just went on for ages, like this whole kind of depressed atmosphere, and everyone kind of felt guilty about having fun, and everyone just felt responsible for like, you know, helping out. So that just went on for ages and ages and ages. And I think like the subculture kind of stuff is picking up its energy again, but it's taken a really long time, I'd say. Yeah.
So you see a tattoo from Horitoku in a magazine. You call him up like everyone does all the time. And then you actually meet him. He agrees to meet you to tattoo you. And you get interested. And 20 years later, you're still writing about it, releasing a fourth book on a topic. What is it about the craft itself that kind of really got you hooked, that you wanted to understand more, and that you want people to understand more as well? Because that's, I imagine, why you write about it.
It's a few things in parallel. Like, I mean, like, it's one of like, there is an element that I do kind of like the kind of, this kind of clandestine kind of underground, and also like I think the beauty of the tattoo a little bit is like this kind of like very kind of, you know, like the fact that it's not accessible is like one of the appeals, that it's kind of like this hidden kind of beauty. So so like for example, like but yeah, actually, so I'll just go back to but like I would say like one of the reasons I like it is because it combines like the this kind of like subculture stuff that I grew up with the craftsmanship, with the very, very serious like technical skill, and also like the dedication to the craft, the perseverance. And there's also a lot of things that are kind of like inexplicable. So it's like, you know, there is no functional purpose. Like, you know, with a lot of artisanal things, like it's like a cup, like you use it. Like there is like a functional, practical use. Like
historically speaking, though, I read some bits and pieces that it was used to mark people in Japan, criminals. Like, oh, you've done something. Here's a mark on your body, so everyone can know you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
Was this one of the first kind of commonly used ways of the tattoo, or were there some other things before that?
There's many kind of like elements, but like with the criminal, like, so the association with criminality started because basically in the Edo period, like there was these punishment tattoos. So if you go to like the Meiji University, they've got in the criminology department, like they've got a museum. And so it's quite interesting because they have like displays on like all the different ways that they're like, that they'll get like official kind of punishments and stuff. And so there's like things like exiling people or like house arrest or like, quite gruesome photos of like, like images of like kind of tying people up or, and like tattooing was one of them. And so there's always been this kind of association with like criminality and tattooing. And so for example, like with organized crime groups, when they were doing the tattoos as like initiation rites and things like that, to scare people, because in people's minds there was always this association with kind of like punishment or like criminality and tattoos. But at the same time, there's also like other kinds of people, like for example, firemen, like craftsmen, like carpenters, like who are also getting tattooed
for protection in a way.
Yeah, like talismanic reasons, and that's also a big part of tattooing as well. So there's all these kinds of interesting and fascinating elements, and that are still very prevalent today. So
it's interesting that the association with criminality preserved, because you also write about the fact that if we go back further in history, the Ainu in Hokkaido were having traditional tattoos.
Yeah.
The people from the Ryukyu kingdom, which is now commonly called Okinawa, also had their tattoos.
Yeah.
Why did these kind of not shine through? I believe even the Jomon people had kind of some tattoos much earlier.
Because like one of the big reasons is because like in the post-war there was like this whole like there was a huge culture of Yakuza movies. And that became like a huge part of the popular consciousness. And so and these films are like super popular. Like, so when you talk to like a lot of the old school tattoo masters, they say like a lot of people come in wanting exactly what Takakura Ken had in a certain film. Yeah, it's like they want the exact same thing. And so a lot of people like they because they're very romanticized versions of of a kind of like Robin Hood kind of trope. So even though they're like ultra violent films, they're kind of like there's a kind of like morality or street justice, and people find them. Yeah, there's this whole kind of like like very romantic kind of archetypal kind of like male role like within these movies, and then and people want to get this same kind of like tattoos. So that's where that kind of association comes from, and it's like, and that's a huge part of the culture. Like, yeah.
So that's an association with the art, with the tattoo itself.
Yeah.
But who are the people that are making these? Horitoko, for example. He's a master that has learned this from someone, but he's not affiliated with organized crime. So where does that kind of craftsmanship culture come from, and how is it being preserved in its own kind of element, if without necessarily being involved with organized crime, so to say?
Well, the thing is, like, with a lot of the horishi, like so
the horishi are the tattoo masters,
the tattoo masters, yeah. A lot of the horishi, like, to be perfectly honest, like, I would say about 20 years ago, like, a lot of their clients were organized crime people. So, like, really a lot. Like, in some cases, like, 100%. So, like, in terms of the super classic Japanese tattoos, and then basically what's happened over the years is like it's gone from like 100% to like less than 1%. So there's many reasons for this. Like a huge reason is because there's not many yakuza anymore. So the numbers have like super dwindled, like because of like organized crime laws. So that's one of the big reasons. And then the other big reason is the tattoo boom happened. So a lot of people don't, like a lot of young people who are slightly informed, they don't associate Japanese tattoos with yakuza at all. And not only that, they didn't grow up with these films, like with the famous,
because they're from like the post-war period, so 70s, 80s, and
yeah. So it's like it's a totally different era. So like it just dwindled. It went from like 100 to less than 1%. But at the same time, because of the people like who make the laws, or like they're of the age that remembers this kind of like post-war like yakuza movie kind of era. So there's a kind of disconnect between the reality of now and the way people like is perceived in the mainstream. So yeah, and yeah.
What do these tattoos mean for the artists? And because I imagine for them, the firefighters, the artisans, they do them as a talisman. It's for self-protection. the Yakuza, it's a rite of entry. It's a way for them to maybe scare off other people,
Yep.
showcase their personality. But what do these mean for the artists? Why do these artists kind of want to learn and preserve this traditional way? And what are they trying to convey with maybe specifically the tebori, where they still do everything by hand traditionally?
For a lot of the artists, well, for the artists that I'm particularly interested in, it's a culture and context. So at the moment, what's happening is it's on social media. So and this was like really, really not a thing before. And so before, the only way you could actually see Japanese tattoos, the only two ways is like either the centaur or matsuri, where like these like heavily tattooed people are kind of like represented. And the people that I'm kind of interested in, like basically the artists that I think the most charismatic, probably like are involved in like this kind of downtown culture. So it's part of like this whole like shitamachi culture in general, and it's really a culture and context. So it's this kind of idea of like in the Edo period, like it was the commoners getting it. So with the woodblock prints, so there's three cultures that kind of rose up at the same time. It was like the woodblock prints or the ukiyo-e, the kabuki, and then also the woodblock prints. And they all had a relationship where like they were influencing.
And the tattoo, you mean?
Yeah, and the tattoos, yeah. And so they're all influencing each other. And so like a lot of the charismatic roles were played by tattooed people in the kabuki theater. And then like the ukiyo-e, the woodblock print masters, they were doing they were depicting the protagonists of the kabuki, and they'd make increasingly sophisticated like tattoo like depictions within the woodblock prints, and particularly with these kinds of Robin-esque kind of protagonists, like the most famous series is like by Utagawa Kuniyoshi, and he did a series on Suikoden, which is like these it's like basically a Chinese tale, but it depicts like 108 kind of like heavily tattooed like Robin-esque kind of bandits. And so that became part of the popular consciousness, and the woodblock prints basically informed the Japanese tattoo. So when you look at a Japanese tattoo, basically it's a woodblock print conformed to the body. So so a lot of the Japanese tattoo masters, they're obsessed with woodblock prints. Like they're really obsessed with like when I spend time with them, it's like a lot of the time we're going to woodblock print shows and stuff like that, like going to Jimbocho looking for reference material. It's like just like it's a real fascination and obsession with just like the source imagery, and also being like so the two artisans I've followed around the most over my career would be Horitoku, and then another guy's Horikazu, and so he's in Asakusa. But he's very much involved in like the whole shitamachi downtown culture. So like the matsuri, like he runs a mikoshi, which is a portable shrine. He does the organization. Every single day he goes to a center, like every single day.
Wow.
So and that's where like a lot of the tattooed people come, and then he's a second generation, so he's able to see his dad's work as well in the center. So so it's kind of like he lives like an Edo era person. Like when you see these people, there's no difference to like the Edo era, like how I imagine the Edo era commoners live, and to the way that they're existing now. It's totally analog. Like all their relationships are analog. It's like they build a relationship with their customers. They find people at the center. Like it's just like living like a this kind of like shitamachi culture. So for them, it's like a culture and it's a culture and context, like I mentioned. And so for me personally, I don't understand how someone could just look on the internet, like on Instagram, and just be like, oh, I'm going to become like a tattoo artist just from looking at the pictures, because it's just, but that's the norm now. So so nowadays, like it's like Instagram people. So it's the same reason you'd want to be on Instagram. And a lot of the reasons I would say a lot of people, like young people, want to be tattoo artists is because it's cool. So they get like clout, and then they get a lot of followers, and then they go on YouTube, and it's all about being showy. Whereas the beauty of the Japanese tattoo is that it's not showy. It's like it's what we call iki in Japanese, and iki is like it's a sensibility like born from the Edo era, because with the commoners, because they actually had quite a lot of money, like it was a time of peace. And so the merchants, even though they were the lower echelons of the social stratum, they had a lot of money, and also like they were also the commoners were the cultural custodians. So the things that are considered to be like the the representative things of Japan, like the sumo wrestling, the woodblock prints, like a lot of the Matsuri culture and stuff like that. Like the kabuki theater, that's all commoner culture. It's not like the high culture of the elite. It's like the commoners, and so they were kind of like the custodians of the culture. And so, sorry, I've just totally lost my train of thought.
So the tattoo artists basically are preserving that culture. They're living the culture in context, as you've explained.
Yeah. And so, whereas like so this whole idea that it's like this notion of Ikki is that like because the commoners were being quite flash as well, and just like flaunting their hedonism, like all these sumptuary laws, like luxury laws, were placed on them, and it was kind of like, hey, tone it down a bit, like and so they weren't allowed to wear silk and stuff like that, so they can only wear cotton, and so this sensibility of Ikki, which is basically like they'd show off, but in places you couldn't see. So it'd be like the underside of a kimono would be like super embellished. And so when they're walking, you could see a little glimpse of it, but it wouldn't be like super on display. And this kind of like, and this became like aesthetic sensibility, and it's still part of Shitamachi culture. So it's the beauty of like this kind of like Ikki culture is like hyper embellishing yourself, but like you'd only see a little bit of a glimpse of it.
Interesting.
And that's seen to be more beautiful than just like being super flash and stuff. And so even with the artisans like Orikazu or Doku, you could be standing outside their apartment, like the studio, and there's no way you'd know that there was a artisan.
Because it's just a regular apartment. It's not advertised. There's no kanban outside saying, hey, come up to the third floor for a tattoo.
Yeah. It's very, very kind of like, it's very, that kind of hidden appeal is like, it's what's considered Ikki. And so, yeah, like, but now it's changed because everyone's on Instagram and they just like, and on YouTube and stuff like that. So it's a totally different era. And actually, I think what's happening and like why I wanted to do this book as well is like, I actually think the work is suffering. So I think the
quality of the work,
it's really dropping. So I can definitely say that, and because they're not part of they're not part of the culture. So their sensibilities aren't formed from being part of the culture.
The artists or the customers?
The art, like both, but like the artists in particular, yeah. So, and they're not referencing the source material. So they're copying other people on the internet. So, so the work gets really distorted, but not in a good way.
So it's no longer as much this very traditional master and deshi relationship where the knowledge is passed on, where someone has to do an apprenticeship for 20 years before they get to do their first tattoo on someone else. But people learn, and they want to learn fast because they want to create, because they want to publish their work. Make a living as well, I imagine, is a big part of it. I don't know how the working conditions were for these traditional artists, but I imagine they didn't necessarily have access to some of the usual social benefits of being a shakaijin.
Yeah.
So maybe this younger generation is kind of trying to change that, but the work itself and this culture is changing. How many of these traditional artists are left? Is there a number? Is it known, or is it because they don't advertise themselves? They might be here or there, but
I couldn't say. Like, I really couldn't say. And like, again, it's like a subjective kind of opinion, like based on what I like, which is basically artisanal culture. And so, like, whether you say like how many are left, like, it depends on whether you mean like how many that are competent. Do you know what I mean? Or like, but there's very few left that are doing what I would call like Edo era, like Edo style. Yeah. So, like very, very, very few. That's actually one of the reasons I wanted to leave this culture behind.
So in this book, you actually go and meet quite a few of them. You interview them. You kind of, in a way, put down their words for hopefully a long time for people to find in this book. But what is it that they want and you want people to know about this traditional Japanese tattoo? What perception of it do you want to change, or do you want to preserve for maybe the next generation?
Actually, like, I try not to have too much of an agenda. So I just like, I'm putting down like just as a record.
As a record.
Yeah. So like my agenda is to like create a beautiful book. And my agenda is to showcase artisans who I think are culturally interesting and relevant, and also their tattoo work is a really high standard. But aside from that, it's not like I'm trying to say, oh no, like tattoos are like this now, or like we should do this, or like it's like I think that kind of will like the conclusions people can draw can be based from like the actual facts. So I think a lot of like people when they write tattoo articles, like it's like the basic agenda is like, and I've written stories like this, is like, the yakuza aren't getting tattooed anymore. Like we should make, we should reduce the prejudice against tattooed people. So and yeah, I've written like stories like that as well. But for this particular book, it was really, really, I just wanted to like state, what was happening, and kind of like preserve this quality of work, like
have it documented and have it for people to discover and see.
Yeah, and also like, when I go to Jimbocho, like the book district in Tokyo, and so for people who haven't been there, it's another place I recommend. It's like the world's biggest book district. There's like 10 million books in the collective inventory. And so I'm looking at books from the Edo period and like seeing how the common is lived and stuff. And so when I'm making this kind of book, I'm imagining people like in, like 100 years from now, like going, oh, this is how like people, were enjoying tattoos.
And maybe use this as a reference material for the next tattoos.
Yeah, really. And one of the impetuses like for making this book was like the guy on the cover. So and so I kind of felt like, oh, well, it's going in the social media kind of direction, and it's kind of like a lost cause kind of thing. Like it's it's just gone in a different like thing altogether. But then when I saw this work, it was like by Horikozu, on one of his clients, he's like a jiu-jitsu champion, and he was coming in 3 times a week, and it was like the density of the work, like the power, like it was actually, even though I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tattoos, like just the dense, the amount of energy coming out of this tattoo is just like, I haven't really felt that kind of like overwhelming and also breathtaking kind of like power from a singular like work since I was a teenager and saw Haritoko's work. So it was just like, and I felt like that kind of like mystique and the appeal of Japanese tattoos in this kind of work. And I was like, okay, so and it really motivated me to just put this on record.
How long does it take to make this? The image on the cover, we can have it here, and people can see when they click the link to maybe check out the book later. But this kind of a huge full bodysuit, how long did it take to make from start to finish?
A couple of years, and also, but he's quite unusual because he was coming 3 times a week.
How does it work when you come 3 times a week? Because the skin needs to heal. He's you mentioned jiu-jitsu champion, so I imagine he's training too.
Yeah. Like you go from like a tattoo session, and then we shot him at the jiu-jitsu gym, like at the dojo, and I was like, you just got tattooed.
Isn't that not like the opposite of what is usually recommended after getting tattooed?
I don't think they're really following recommended guidelines. Like, but yeah, but he's unusual. Like, and also like with Horiko's in particular, like his work is so detailed. It's like, it's crazy levels of meticulousness. And again, it's this sense of icky. It's like just being so hyper embellished in places that no one's ever going to see. So most people don't do it this dense. And also like at the moment, it's quite popular just to have like huge like gradations, like huge, like it kind of looks like a cover up almost, like just like huge areas of black. So this is actually very, very rare. So yeah, this kind of like, and it doesn't even like, at this point, it looks like the highest quality Yuzen kimono. Like and because even though it's like so intense and it's so kind of clandestine and like it has this kind of like dark kind of appeal, but at the same time, like there's an elegance and the composition and the beauty of the work and the majesty. Like it is something completely out of the ordinary. Like it's really otherworldly.
So for people that are really interested and seriously considering getting these kind of pieces, how do they get in touch with the artists that are, or artisans that are not really advertising themselves on social media? They don't have a camera outside. And I imagine they don't take phone calls anymore of complete strangers.
like from strange people. Some of them, like, because a lot of them have their regulars, so like some of them will probably might consider doing them, but like it is kind of like still like often you need an introduction. It's case by case, so I really don't want to say, because I don't want to be responsible like for a whole bunch of people just knocking on their door, but and trying to find them. But like it is really case by case, and quite often, like if you're a tattoo artist, like they'll make time to do souvenirs, because you know, like a lot of the famous tattoo artists will go to like other famous tattoo artists and just get souvenirs and stuff. So those kinds of people can usually like find a way in. But like for example with Horiyasu, like he will refuse to do anything that's smaller than a back piece. So if you have that level of commitment, like they'll probably take you on. But like if not, it's pretty rare. Or yeah.
So you wanted to document all of this, and it was very important for you to do it in a book, not just articles that go online, but a physical book. And you're describing Jimbocho, the book district of Tokyo, and kind of imagining your book being on the shelves of one of those shops maybe 100 years from now. You mentioned books before. You've written many. Why are they so important to you? That they're physical, that they're here, that they're present.
Like as you know, being a book lover yourself, like there is like a certain quality and a tactile beauty to, and it's an item as well. And so actually, like I interviewed like a lot of the Jimboja book owners, and it is really interesting, like the way that a book functions in terms of like information dissipation. So with social media, like you're just scrolling through, you don't actually you're not really consuming anything. Like it's just like entertainment, like it's like stimulation, but it's not actually like for the purpose of actually learning anything. And one of the interesting things, like a guy, the owner of Isedo, like one of the really, really famous bookstores in Jimbocho, was saying was that like the role, like when you have like a book, it's kind of like in a place like a bookstore. Like when you're on Amazon, you just look for the book you're looking for and then you buy it. But like when you go to a bookstore, you'll browse, and so you find other information. And there's like a, you know, the bookstore owner who's the curator, who is like so intensely knowledgeable about what they're selling, and they can introduce you to different titles. And so it's a way of like expanding your knowledge, which is basically the purpose of books. And so like in the interests of like not having society rush to the bottom, like you do want to improve yourself constantly, like and like looking for books, looking for information, looking to expand your mind, looking to like have empathy and like understand how other people and other cultures live. Like books is like the ultimate for that. Like, and so and it's not just books, it's like the physical place that's a bookstore. So whenever people like buy my books, like of course I'm really grateful if they buy it on Amazon, but I'm always like, please try and support your bookstore, like, because you can't have a city and not have a bookstore. Like that's not a real city. That's just like, this is like buildings. Do you know what I mean? It's not, you can't, for any serious city, like for any city to call itself a city, you need to have a bookstore. Like you need to have that kind of community space. And you know, like when I was living, I had like stints living in Hong Kong, and when it gets to like, obviously Japan is not that kind of place, but like when you're in a place of like political tyranny and like political like strife, like the bookstore is so important as a gathering spot. Like it has so many different functions in terms of like being able to disseminate information and like just on very, very like multiple layers, like they are really, really important. And there is something about like the physical nature of paper as well, and the way that you are able to absorb information with paper. And even if it doesn't have to be like a book, it can be like a zine, because I understand not everyone has access to like being able to publish a book. But even just publishing a zine, which anyone can do, like you can, like it's still the same. Like you're still able to, you know, absorb the kind of information. Like you can still participate in print culture, and like there is a kind of zine revival as well, which I think is really interesting. So so yeah, it's just like books, printed matter, and also because I'm so obsessed with books, like I do tend to work on projects that are visually kind of driven.
A lot of photography present in all of your work.
Yeah, and I think that's also from working because my first job in Japan was working at August, which was like a photography kind of agency. So I'm always thinking in terms of like the visual layout of a book and how it's going to present like visually, and um so I do also tend to choose topics that are kind of like yeah, also visually driven, which is another good reason to be in Japan as well.
Combining books and cultures, and you mentioned Jimbocho with 10 million books on the shelves. How is the book culture here in Japan? I often see on the train people hiding the books they read behind these like paper covers, but a lot of people read these small tankobon softcover books and have them with them. Is it changing? Is there like a constant flow of people that continue reading with physical books? I don't see too many e-readers here compared to maybe overseas.
I don't know anyone who reads on a tablet. Like there is still like a respect of paper.
Mhm.
Like there is a culture of paper in Japan as well. Like people like like even in your studio, you've got like folding screens with paper on it. Like I think there's an enjoyment of reading, like in just being in bed and like if anyone's seen the film Perfect Days, you can, before the guy goes to sleep, he's got like a book and he's reading in his futon. Like there is this kind of like you associate books just like relaxation, like a very pleasant feeling. That like being on your phone or like reading on a tablet like doesn't provide. And yeah, I think like books have a kind of special place in Japanese society. Like of course nowadays you just see people like scrolling on their phone and stuff like that. But like and also I'm a bit biased because like all of my friends are into books as well. So like everyone. So and it's also the thrill of the hunt. So when you do go to a place like Jimbocho, like it's just like the fun of trawling and like being exposed to different people's passions and things like that.
And you never know what you're gonna find either.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. And as you know, like with Japanese popular culture in particular, like it's not driven, it's driven by like aficionados. It's driven by like hyper nerds that are into one thing. Like it's very, very specialized. And so when you see like books or magazines, it's a culmination of that kind of like mentality. And also a really great like shop in Jimbocha, like it's called Magnif and they specialize in magazines.
Okay.
And like this kind of like very kind of geeky, kind of obsession like with a particular topic is very, very visible in the magazines. And like the magazines are so great, like really, really fantastic. And they'll like, and one of the nice things is like you open up a page in a magazine, you could be like reading a magazine about sneakers, and then but they'll introduce things like like hip hop culture or like the other things that are like kind of parallel, and then you'll find out about like 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 things to do with like race issues and like with African Americans or like just like any amount of things that you could like find in parallel to like sneakers. And so whereas if you're just like looking on the net, you're only going to find sneakers. You're not going to be exposed to these other kinds of things. So yeah, I think like having the information in book format, like for me it feels like it doesn't exist unless it's like
unless it's physically printed and bound in a book.
Yeah.
You're gonna have your release party in Jimbocho for this book this July.
Yeah.
People that want it, they can get it there. It will be available in other places, maybe at your local bookstore.
Yes. Yeah.
And we'll put the links to everything so they can find them. But before we wrap up our conversation, because we covered so many topics and we talked about the tattoo, Japanese tattoo, are there any other things that you would have liked to bring up, maybe that I didn't ask you about that were still important for you to share today?
Well, my basic passions, I think we did cover most of them. So yeah, the books primarily, the tattoos, and then also Doku. I'm actually really glad you brought that up because that's a really big part of my life as well. So yeah, I'd say they're the major ones. I think the other thing that I get asked so often, so I'm just gonna put this out
so that it's answered once and for all.
Yeah. Like please don't ask me this anymore. But like the really big one is like, can you get into an onsen with a tattoo?
No.
Yeah. I just like, and this is like the most common question I have just from strangers. Like, And the answer is no, like really no. So it's very, very, very difficult. So there's a few that might be like tattoos okay, but most of hakone is not. Like most of the major ones are not. There's a few like in rural Japan, like for example, places in Tsuchiwansen and stuff that are okay. Like trying to get, the tourists to come. But generally think no. Like if you're able to, just think yourself lucky. The way to get around it is to stay in a ryokan with a private onsen. And then you'll be able to be in your own private bath. Or the other one is like a family bath. So you can like go in and like hire the bath and then you hire it for an hour. But the other thing is like in Japan, there's like the other thing I really want to support in Japan is like the culture of sento. So sentos are like public bathhouses, and basically they existed since the Edo period, and it's for the commoners. And so like, and they still exist because a lot of like obviously everyone has their own bath, like like mostly like in their own homes, but for the working class and a lot of the artisans, they didn't have their own bathrooms. They were staying in like what's called nagaya, which is like the row houses, and like so they'd have to use this kind of like the public bathhouse. And so it's a kind of like democratic space where like basically anyone can go, and like it's multi-generational, like it's for the local community. And the places where they're the most common, which is like Sumida, like that's where there's like a really, really high proportion of tattooed people. So so there is a kind of like a thing in like in the downtown people's minds that like you're going to expect to see tattooed people there. And so so generally, even though it's changing, like with new owners and stuff like that, like if you do want to see a traditional Japanese tattoo, like go to Sumida and go to a center, because that's where you're going to see them.
So short answer is no, you can't go to an onsen except maybe a few here and there, but go to the sento. Most of them will be still okay with it, and this is also where you can experience some of the tattoo culture that you've described to us today and in your book. And hopefully people maybe will find more information online if they're looking for specific places, if they accept or not people with tattoos.
Yeah.
Manami, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having
sharing your passions, your interest, and a lot of your work. It's been quite extensive, and I think we only covered the surface. So for people who want more, they can check out more of it on your website, which will be linked below, and maybe reach out if they have more questions that are not about whether or not tattoos are allowed in onsen.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you everyone for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye. That was super cool. Thanks for sticking with us until the end. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to Unpacking Japan. It's the best way to help us grow and ensures we can keep bringing you these deep dives every week. Till next time, take care.